Welcome to the True Wealth Podcast, where we specialize in helping aspiring homeowners break into the real estate market and help investors create and build wealth through real estate. We will be sharing some of our best advice around real estate so you can purchase your first home or grow your real estate portfolio, increase profitability, reduce taxes, and achieve financial freedom. Your host, Sean Adiemi, is a certified financial planner, mortgage professional, and fellow investor. We want to help you get real so you can pursue your investing dreams with confidence. A real estate acquisition lifestyle is within your grasp. Financial freedom is possible when you have the right mindset, coaching, advice, and community. So, let's get real.
Christine, thank you very much for joining us today. Christine is a property manager and a realtor. Christine, before we get into our conversation today, we're going to be talking about how to choose a property manager. What are the things you want to look for when you are looking into getting a property manager for your rental property? But before we get into all of that, Christine, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm Christine. I am a property manager. I'm also a realtor. I started out doing property management. So I joined a small little boutique property management company in Port Credit, a very small company. The owner owned about 17 properties of her own around downtown. So I was learning a lot. A lot of my perspective is coming from an investment standpoint, just because a lot of her clients were investor clients. So that's kind of where I started. I learned how to vet tenants, how to do showings, how to present the units, and how to deal with day-to-day issues that had to do with just tenants and keeping everything in order. So that's kind of my background in that area. And since then, I've started to do property management on my own with residential properties mostly.
Mm-hmm. You do a few other things as well. Can you tell us about that? Picnic, generally.
I have an events company. It's called Picnic. I started 2.5 years ago, and it's like taken over my life. It's very busy. I do micro events for small groups. I do brand launches. I've worked with TV shows. So just events, coordination, decor, styling, all of that stuff. I'm kind of just very busy.
Yes, you are the serial entrepreneur, and you understand what running a business is like and the ins and outs of it. But going back to the property management, so tell us a little bit, what does a property manager do? Because it's one of the things the name seems self-explanatory, but there are situations where we're talking with investors and we say, you should get a property manager, but they're like, why can't I just do it myself? Tell us, what does a property manager do?
Okay, so a property manager or a property management company, it basically keeps your asset in order. Mm-hmm. So we're talking from top to bottom. So not only the tenants that are in there, if it's commercial, but also the residential tenants that are in there, the day-to-day upkeep of the unit, any queries, basically anything. And a lot of people think that, yes, I should have a property manager maybe because I don't live in the city where I own the property. And that's not necessarily the case. A lot of my clients live in the city, but they just don't have the time. Like, they don't have the time to deal with tenant inquiries. They don't have the time to deal with repairs. They don't have the time to deal with bookkeeping and collecting rents and doing deposits. So it goes from financial to the actual physical health of your property, to the tenants, to just about everything. If you're in a condo, there's also building maintenance that you may need to keep up with. If you have a property manager, they're handling those things for you. So yeah, I do work on a smaller scale residential level. So that's what I've noticed. But for larger properties, I mean, I did help in managing another property that had about 20 units. So it's kind of the same thing. You have a list of all of the tenants. You have a list of late payments, things to keep up with, repairs in the units. It just gets very overwhelming. And if it's not your specialty, it's better that you do hire someone who can manage it for you, especially in Ontario, where it's like the government is like gung-ho for tenants. You need to protect yourself as a landlord. You don't really have anybody protecting you.
Right.
So the property manager is kind of your best bet in that sense.
So part of your job as well is finding the tenants, right? Or even the transition between one tenant and the other. Tell us a little more about what that looks like.
Okay, yes. So the biggest job, in my opinion, after actually finding the property, I would say, because I'm working on a property right now that it kind of just doesn't make sense. There's a lot of units in one home, and it just doesn't make sense in terms of parking and people coming in and out and just space and noise and stuff. So I think that's the first step, is actually finding the right residential property to use for investments, especially since, like, you may, sorry, I'm diverting a little bit, but
go ahead.
I feel like the house is the most important part. I mean, if you're going to have a property and you know you won't have parking for all the tenants, then you need to make sure that that property is very close to transit, so that the tenants who do use transit have that. So I've kind of found myself in this position where it's taken me a while to rent out this particular property because we require tenants who don't have a vehicle, and the bus is just so far. So they come and see it and they're like, Christine, it took me 25 minutes to walk here. Like, it's not going to work for me. Right. So there's that. And then the price point of the actual unit is quite expensive. So it's like, if someone doesn't have a vehicle, maybe they don't really have the funds to
afford owning a vehicle and all the expenses that come with it.
And then the unit.
Yeah.
Unit. So they're probably going to have roommates. So then we have more people in a small condensed space. So there's a lot that goes into, I think the house is the most important. Like, getting a house and saying, perfect, this will be perfect for rental. It's not as easy as it may seem. There's a lot of different moving parts that go into it to make it work. But I'll go back to tenants. Yes. Finding tenants is very important. It's going to vary based on the area of the home. So if you live in the GTA, you know that Brampton has a different crowd of renters as opposed to maybe North York, where there's a lot of immigrants coming in. So you're going to meet a different group of people. So what I've noticed for the property that I'm trying to rent right now is a lot of the people reaching out are immigrants. They've been
like
in the country.
Newcomers.
Yes, newcomers. They've been here for less than 6 months. So they don't have job history for you. They don't have credit history for you. They may have just started a job. A lot of them are doing cash work. So your ideal tenant that you would want, that maybe is in a full-time job, has been there for 2 years plus, has great credit, has great landlord history. You can reach out to them because they're all local. Like, it's easy for you to vet. You don't have that in this area just because of kind of the group, the community that you're in. So that's one challenge. But yeah, I would say with tenants, it all depends on the property and if the landlord is living in the property. That's another thing that's really big. I know that you mentioned that you have to be kind of careful when you're vetting kind of, their background and this and that, but I feel like it matters.
Right. Tell us about that, actually. Tell us more about that.
It's hard to, I know, like, I get what you're saying. You can't post it on there. It kind of looks bad to say vegetarian only or this,
no,
that.
It looks bad. Illegal. Like, that's what I was getting at. Let's be clear here.
Yeah,
it's illegal because it's a slippery slope, right? It's a slippery slope when you're trying to vet, which is why I think this is a timely conversation, because, like, it's a slippery slope when you start going into the specifics of what you're looking for. Because again, it's against the Ontario Human Rights Act, right? So
it's a slippery slope. I agree. When you look at it from the perspective of being a property manager, where you have to deal with this tenant for the completion of their lease, it makes more sense. Because yes, we can say, I've seen it. Like, I've seen people that say, like, I've had my own clients tell me, like, I don't want anybody that cooks with curry or very strong scent. Like, I'm just have to be honest here. They tell me that, Christine, this is the house. This is my bottom line. I need to make $2,000 a month. Whatever you can get extra, great. Let's do that. no curry, no this, no that. You have to keep all of those things into consideration because it's going to affect the chemistry of the home if they're living together. Do you know what I mean?
That's
so
where I was
my thing
getting
was
at.
like, you can't, don't put this in the public space. Like, if you was a landlord, because this is why I think like there's so much pushback on landlords, because there's a lot of talk out there. And there was an article about how many landlords are losing money. A lot of talk out there that a lot of landlords don't know what they're getting into. Like, this is a business. There's wins, there's losses. And if you just want someone to help you subsidize the cost of your home, my advice, as a realtor, just, hey, talk to the community, go to the church. Hey, Sister Mary, you know anybody looks at, hey, you know what I mean? Go in if you're have to be that specific. But if if you need to make a certain amount of money, this is a business. And with the business, you got to operate within the bounds of the law, right? And you're going to have to take your chances. Hey, this person cooks with this person is that. This person doesn't live how I want them to live. But again, they're paying me the rent. You know what I mean? This is how it goes. So that's my thing, because it's like, hey, it's a risk and reward. And so you got to know the game that you're playing at.
So Christine, from what it sounds to me is you're having to balance as a property manager. My client wants this specificity, but if you're the one handling the end to end, finding the tenants, putting it out on the public space, how are you deciding what to put on the public space? Because I think that's where ultimately is coming from. I can't go put on MLS, I want Mandarin, female.
Mandarin speaking, female, vegetarian, that's only 5'3", and doesn't have a boy. And another thing I've heard, doesn't have a boyfriend. So only women are allowed in the space,
So how do you navigate that as a property manager, right?
There's
Between what
so
your client
many...
wants and what's allowed.
Yes. So there's so many things, like what you just said about Sister Mary, like bringing Sister Mary maybe from the church. I wouldn't do that either. Because what I've noticed from a lot of my landlord clients is that when your tenant is familiar with you, they tend to get away with a lot more. It's hard to collect rents. You kind of have to be their friend at that level. So knowing them on a personal level kind of breaks the boundaries of this is a business.
Right.
So like everything you're saying is true, but it's like, sometimes you work with a stranger. So yes, all the posts are very generic. They say exactly what you're looking for. We're looking for 5-star tenants. We're going to ask for credit report, employment letter, pay stubs. And then when I actually speak to them online, that's when I'm doing most of my vetting. So I don't tend to show units as often as I get inquiries. I do all of my pre-screening either online or over the phone. So right now I have a whole bunch that I'm trying to find for a condo. And I've said the same thing. How many people are going to be living in the unit? What is the monthly income? How many of you are working? Are you able to provide job letter, pay stubs, all of that stuff? Where are you coming from? Why are you leaving? I ask those questions because it's good to know, like, why are you leaving the current place you're at? Have you given your landlord enough notice? Because if you haven't, then you're not going to give me enough notice when you're ready to leave.
That's right.
So kind of that, you want to see that tenant etiquette from the very start. And then when they come and see the unit, I mean, none of my landlords want smoking. So And
that's within the bounds of the law.
That's within the boundaries. You can say non-smoking
because it's a health and safety issue. Like, and as long as your smoking doesn't disrupt, or your smoking can disrupt the enjoyment of others, right? So, I think smoking is good, but cooking, I don't know how you handle the cooking stuff.
You can't.
Okay.
You can't really handle it. The best you can do is kind of guess ahead of time that this is probably not going to work. You can't say this is not going to. You have to, at the end of the day, you can have 10 applicants who are all great and they all work, all their finances are good, everything works out. You have to pick, right? So at the end of the day, it's still the landlord's decision at the end who they decide to go with for whatever reason, unfortunately. So I do that. So when they arrive, I show them the unit. I kind of get their vibe. If they say they don't smoke, but I smell kind of smoke on them, then I know that they smoke. Sometimes it's even pet hair and they say they don't have pets. Like I can tell these things.
Right.
So I kind of feel them out that way. I also do social media checks. So I check on Facebook, I check on Instagram and LinkedIn, and you can see like if they have pets or if
You
they
can verify
smoke,
what they've told you,
or
basically,
if they have
sometimes online.
friends that smoke or family that smokes, or maybe your girlfriend does. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of verify these things by kind of going behind and having a look. Of course, I still do the employment letter checks, make sure everything is up to date. I don't call the supervisor on their application. I call HR directly because the supervisor could be anybody. So I like to go through HR. I like to be prompted that, hey, welcome to so-and-so company. You've reached here. Press 1 for HR. And then I go in and I talk to HR. I like to do that directly. You also want to make sure that their probationary period is over. That's important for the landlord to know that their job is secure. I've had some applications that have been fake. So that's important as well.
What do you mean fake?
Fake companies.
Okay.
Yeah, so you just use fake company names. So they, instead of saying True Wealth, they may say Blue Wealth. Okay, so you Google Blue Wealth. There's no history there. You can't really see when the company was created or the date it was created or the board of directors or anything. They give you a number. Last time I called and he just said, hello, who's this? I guess he didn't know that it was time to get into character.
Put it on.
So he called back quickly and I was like, it's okay. Like, we're okay. We're done. But that's important to look at as well. Pay stubs, of course, can also be altered. A lot of people that alter their pay stubs, they don't update the year-to-date portion. So although they're making $400 a month, it's not calculated properly in the YTD. Sometimes they forget. Little things like that are clues. If you don't believe their income, you ask them for income statements showing that the money is actually going to their account on the day that matches the pay stubs. Like all of these are very important.
Little things that could make a big difference.
Because you're representing your landlord. So all of these things, like you said one thing, Sean, you mentioned that there's only so much you can do, but you should make sure that you cover your bases. Like it's true. This person who's perfect may lose their job and now they don't have money and now there's nothing that you can do. But at least you know that when you were going through these steps, you made sure you checked all your bounds. So that's how I vet my tenants.
It's about character too, because you're talking about people that lose their job. So if someone loses their job, and they, you would think that they would actively go try to find one or tell you, hey, this is the end of the road for me. I've lost my job. I recognize I can't pay rent. I gotta leave, and they give you the appropriate notice and get out.
But if they've lost their job and they can't pay their rent, they can't leave because they have to pay first and last somewhere else.
No, so I know, but what I'm saying is a character issue. Because I if that was me, and I consider I'm someone of good character. I'm going back home. I'm borrowing money, but then there are people of other character where they're just gonna, oh, you can't kick me out for another 6 months. So I'm gonna just chill until it comes in, or they'll or someone of good character will start making a payment plan with the landlord. Hey, this is the situation. So I'm saying all that to say, like, ultimately, we're trying to get to the person's character as well, because there are people where the first expense that they think of every month is their rent, and there are other people that they know, oh yeah, the landlord can't kick me out, so I can chill on the rent and focus on other things. So trying to find good character people.
Character is very important. I've had issues where it was time to pay the first or the last, and there's been friction, kind of like, oh, well, I don't want to pay this now. I'll pay it when I get the keys. Or, you know what? Legally, you do not have to pay first and last. You have to pay last. Last is your safety. You pay first when you get the keys. So what we've noticed like now is that most landlords, and just in general, even if you're going through MLS, like they want first and last. You're paying first and last 2 months up front to hold your position, pay your lease, and you're secure. But it's actually illegal. It's only supposed to be 1 month. So some tenants will come back and say, well, I asked my friend and apparently it's illegal to take both months now. I don't mind paying my second month. my first month when I move in and I get my keys. That's a certain kind of tenant as well.
How would you take that? Because for me, yes, I'm not allowed to, but this is my place. I'm not giving you the keys.
It's pretty standard. It's like a standard thing too.
Yeah.
So sometimes I would say, okay, I understand what you're saying. It's just the landlord has other people interested and they're willing to pay their first and last. So it all depends on what you want to do. Because, yeah, the market is a bit tight right now. So you want to have a competitive advantage. It's the same way people put down more in their deposit for when they're buying a house so that they look better. Like, it's the same thing.
That's right.
So if you want the competitive edge in comparison to other people also looking at the unit, the landlord does require, she would prefer the first and last. So that's a way to put it. At times there's been friction just with certain things that I kind of say we're not interested anymore. You can say that too, right? If the lease hasn't been signed and you just feel like, yes, you look great on paper, but there's just friction here and I feel like it could go into the long-term relationship, I kind of let that go as well.
Right.
I mean, so those are all things you have to look into. I've had landlords tell me, it's okay, just go with her. And I'm like, no, let's just find somebody else. Because I know that if I leave her with you, you're going to call me and say, Christine, guess what she said this time? You know what I mean? So
yeah,
chemistry is very important as well. Yeah.
So 2 things I want to touch on before we wrap up. You mentioned something about, there's some areas that have new to Canada and new immigrant populations, and they don't have the history. How do you navigate vetting those who are new to Canada within 6 months and don't have the back history? What do you do? I mean, obviously we can't deny them places to live because they legitimately need places to live. So how do you navigate that?
I had one potential tenant ask for, they had an uncle that lived in North York and he owned a business. They were coming from El Salvador. So the uncle was going to be the co-signer, basically to be the one on the lease. He had jobs for them lined up, but obviously the job is not here yet. So co-signing is an option. Honestly, I do feel like people that are coming new into the country, they just need chance and opportunity. And surprisingly, they're going to be the ones to make sure that before anything, there's a roof over their head and they're paying their rent.
Which is true. I find, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I find that those who are new to Canada, especially when you're coming from developing nations, you know how hard things were there. I find that those are actually nicer. They're more polite. They're more willing to. They need people to take a chance on them, and so at least in my case, they've made some of the best tenants. Whereas those who understand the laws, and I'm not saying understanding the laws is a bad thing, but they know how to navigate the landlord and tenant board. They know what to say, what not to say, and how to finesse a landlord. I find that sometimes those are even bigger risk than the new to Canada populations.
I just rented today. He moved in today. He came from India 7 months ago. And I guess when they came, they found a place. It wasn't going well. So he said, Christine, please, I promise I'll be a great tenant. He was taken advantage of by the other person that he lives with. I guess the guy got a house and he just started renting to everybody. So the landlord doesn't even know that he's renting to everybody. I know this because I did a landlord check. So another thing that I do is, because I'm a realtor, so I can do it. When they send you their landlord reference information, I can actually type in the address. So 123 Mary Street, and I can see who is on title. So if you're telling me that Jeremy is on title, but it actually says Mary, then I know that you're giving me a fake landlord reference.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So the on the application it said Raul. And I told him, I said, Raul is not the owner of this house. Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so is the owner. And he's like, yeah, Raul is renting to a whole bunch of people.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I spoke to Raul, I said, you're not the owner. And he got really kind of agitated, like he's now, I've been caught. You know what I mean? So that's another thing. Just calling everybody on the paper is not enough. You need to do background on the people on the paper. Like you need to check LinkedIn and see if this person who's a supervisor actually is the supervisor, if they're on the website. you need to do double, triple check. But yeah, newcomers are most likely the ones who will be taken advantage of. I mean, he had to pay a $600 safety deposit. He didn't get it back. I don't know what that safety deposit was for. So all of those things are things to take into consideration. It is great to help people. My landlord, the one in North York, who we were getting a lot of immigrant inquiries, he said it too. He's like, I was new to the country. I made great money, but nobody gave me a chance because I was new, right? I was new. My wife was pregnant. Nobody wanted to rent to us. I mean, he signed a lease. He met the landlord. The landlord looked at him, looked at his wife and said, no, I'll give you your money back. And then he was back to square one. So he gets it. He gets that people need opportunity. You need to give people chances. But at the same time, people take advantage of others, opportunities. So it's tricky. It's tricky. It's tricky.
I think it goes back to balance. It's trying to figure out, okay, with all of this information I have, get as much information as possible, make a decision from there, but also be human, right? In trying to understand where people are coming from and to see what's legit and what's just a sub-story. And that can be hard to do if you're new if you're renting out a place for the first time. And that's why I generally always recommend work with a realtor, work with a property manager, work with experts who have been there and understand and know the nuance and things they know the telltale signs of what to look for and what not to, which you don't know about. So I think this has all been really great. The last thing I wanted to touch on, but I don't know if we have enough time to go through into this, is how do you, when it comes to short-term and long-term rentals, what does that look like as a property manager? And is there different criteria for managing a property if it's short-term versus if it's a long-term rental?
So short-term rentals are very different. Short-term are most likely going to be furnished. Your Airbnbs, your short-term rentals. In those cases, a lot of them are paid in full in advance. So the vetting process is a little bit different, right? Because now you're not vetting to see if they can maintain the payments. You're just vetting to see if they are as stable potential tenants. The short-term rentals, things like Airbnb, that's not under the LTB. So you don't have that jurisdiction there. Right. It's completely different. It's just kind of between you and the tenant. In comparison to long-term, once you sign the lease and you're a leaseholder, you're doing everything under the LTB. What exactly did you want to
No, I think you brought up a good point because you said something with the short-term rentals, you're typically collecting all the rent up front, right? And so the issue here you're vetting is not so much their income and their ability to pay for the place, but more so, are they who they say they are in terms of identity? And also, are they trustworthy people that would take care of your property? And that's where I think character comes more into play when you're looking at short-term rentals. Actually, they come into play on whether it's short-term or long-term, but the focus more is on the character and the ability for the person to take care of the place. Because just like you said, if it's a short-term rental, it's most likely furnished, has all these amenities. You want to make sure that they are, I guess, good people that would take care of your property the same way you would take care of it. So that's why I asked that question in terms of, are there different things that you kind of look for, when you're vetting for short-term rental versus long-term rental, and you answered it succinctly.
Yeah, I've rented a short-term, fully furnished unit. The family lived down the road. They were completely renovating their home, so they needed about 5 months in a new place, but in the same neighborhood because their kids went to school in that neighborhood. So all of those things worked. I mean, there's no landlord references to call, but you can go and pull and look on public records to make sure that they do own the house like they say they do. And they did. I would still ask about employment just because, I mean, if anybody is employed and has good income, they don't mind giving you that information.
Right.
So, yeah, I asked for employment. I still ask for pay stubs. I still ask for credit reports. And those are things that I do off of Airbnb.
Okay.
Airbnb doesn't usually require those things. You kind of have to go the extra mile if you want to make sure that your tenant is what you're looking for. But yeah, it's just finding out their story. You can even meet them. You can meet them. You can show them around the house. Like, there's a different approach to dealing with short-term renters, especially if they are maybe a family and it's your home that you're opening up to them. Get to know them better. There's a different approach, I would say, in comparison to doing long-term.
Okay. Sounds good. Othniel, was there anything else you wanted to add or any thoughts on?
Yeah, no, I just think, it's, like we said, it's a balance when trying to find the right tenants. And it's about, balancing it all out. I'm making sure we're staying within the limits of the law, not being discriminatory, but at the same time, being vigilant and discerning enough to detect, people that are willing to commit fraud and provide fraudulent documents and are not of good character. And like I said, there are people that know that rent is their number one obligation every month, and they'll, do whatever it takes to make sure it's paid on time and in full. And there are other people that don't. And again, in the screening process, it's trying to determine, try to figure out who those people are and ensure that you get the right tenants.
Yep. Guys, thank you very much for your contributions to this. This has been really helpful. Before we wrap up, Christine, can you tell us, for our listeners or our viewers, if they want to contact you, how can they reach you? Your social media, your email, how can they contact you?
Okay, so I have my real estate website on Instagram. It is MINTONN. You can reach me at christinea@royallepage.ca as well. And I just want to say one thing. If you're looking for somebody to help you rent out your home, I would prioritize a property manager over a realtor. And I'll say this because I'm a realtor. So we went to school, we studied all that stuff. They're teaching us how to buy homes. They're teaching us how to sell homes. They're not really focusing on client and tenant retention and how to vet tenants and stuff.
Wow.
No. So usually when I'm working with my clients, and let's say you had a property that you wanted to rent, I'm most likely going to do it personally. I'm going to do it off of MLS because you're going to get the fake documentation. You're not going to be able to meet the tenant directly. You're going to have to go through an agent, and the agent is going to try and make the tenant seem as suitable as possible to get their commission.
Right.
So I would say prioritize a property manager. Property managers know the ins and outs of managing properties and finding the right tenants. That I would say, yes, a realtor to buy and sell your home. But if you're wanting to rent, focus on somebody who has experience in property management. It's very important. Very, very important. I would prioritize a property manager over a realtor when it comes to renting your own. Finding a home, yes, they can help you find rentals. But if it's to protect yourself, I would deal with someone who focuses directly on property management.
Thank you very much, Christine. And that's all for today. This has been a great conversation. I love it. And maybe we can have an encore sometime and dig deeper into some of this threads that we pulled. But it's been great. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. And this has been the True Wealth Podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
This is all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening to the True Wealth Podcast. Don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to the True Wealth Podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at True Wealth Pod. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, ideas, and questions with us on our social media platforms or email us at podcast@truewealthadvisors.ca. And who knows, your question might be the subject of a future episode.